"I'm freezing. Can I get in, please? I beg you," said the desperate Apache woman to the cowboy. The cold had arrived suddenly, like a shadow falling over the desert plains. The sun had set hours ago, and the once warm desert air was now sharp and cruel. Snow swirled in the wind, and the night felt endless, stretching across the horizon in a frozen silence. Every step was a struggle, and each gust of wind seemed to cut through layers of clothing as though they were nothing at all. In the middle of this harsh winter, a woman moved slowly and with great effort. She was alone, walking along a narrow, snow-covered trail. Her clothes were thin, more suited for a warmer season, and they did little to protect her from the icy air. She hugged herself tightly, trying to keep some of her body heat from escaping, but it was almost useless. Her breath came out in small, visible clouds, and her fingers and toes had begun to feel numb. This woman was Apache. Her dark hair, tangled from the journey, fell loosely across her shoulders. Her eyes, wide and filled with determination, scanned the horizon as she looked for shelter. Breath. Every shadow in the snow seemed like a potential danger. Every sound of the wind was amplified by the silence, and it made her heart beat faster. She had traveled far from her home and family, and the snowstorm had forced her to take a longer path than she intended. She did not know what she would find tonight. At the same time, a man rode slowly across the desert on horseback. He was a cowboy, tall and sturdy, dressed in thick clothing that had been worn from years of work. His boots were coated with dust and ice, and his hands were rough from holding reins and tending to animals. He had finished his work on the ranch for the day, and he was on his way home, eager to reach the warmth of his cabin. As he rode, his eyes caught a small figure moving across the snow. At first he thought it might be an animal, but as he drew closer he realized it was a person. A woman, struggling against the wind, moving slowly, her face pale and frozen from the cold. He slowed his horse and watched her, concern growing inside him. Something about her made him stop completely. She was alone, and it was clear from the way she moved that she was in danger. The woman saw the cowboy as well. Her eyes lit up with hope, but fear quickly followed. She had been walking for hours, unsure if anyone would be out in this storm. She took a few more steps toward him, then raised her voice, trembling from cold and desperation. "I'm freezing. Can I get in, please? I beg you." The cowboy felt a surge of empathy. He had seen people in need before, but there was something different about this moment. The woman's voice was fragile, yet full of courage, and it carried across the wind like a small light in the darkness. He could see her shivering, the snow clinging to her hair and clothes, her teeth chattering even from a distance. He thought quickly. The desert was no place to leave anyone alone, especially not in a storm like this. Danger was everywhere. Frozen water, hidden rocks, icy patches that could break a bone. And yet, he knew his cabin was warm and safe. He had blankets, food, and a fire already burning. He also knew that opening the door to a stranger carried its own risks, but in that instant the decision seemed clear. With a firm nod, he spoke in a calm, steady voice.
"Come on. You can warm up by the fire." Relief flooded her face.
She moved faster now, though carefully, avoiding slipping on the ice beneath her feet. Each step toward him was a small victory, and with every step, the warmth of hope began to replace the cold fear in her heart. The snow was deep, and her boots struggled to find firm ground, but she did not stop. She did not even glance back at the frozen trail she had walked. When she finally reached the cowboy's cabin, she hesitated just for a moment at the doorway. She was not used to trust. Her life had taught her that strangers could be dangerous. But something in the cowboy's eyes, a quiet kindness, reassured her. With a small nod, she stepped inside. The warmth of the cabin enveloped her immediately, and she felt the frozen tension in her body begin to melt. The fire crackled and danced, sending waves of heat into the room. She set her small bag down gently and sank onto a chair near the fire, unable to stop shivering completely. She hugged herself tightly, grateful for the chance to regain some of her strength. The cowboy closed the door behind her and removed his hat. His face was kind, with lines that told stories of long days and hard work.
He moved toward the kitchen area, filling a cup with hot water.
He returned to her side, placing it carefully on a small table.
Here, he said simply.
Drink this. It'll help. The woman's hands trembled as she took the cup. She sipped slowly, feeling the warmth spread through her chest. The taste was simple, but it carried a comfort that she had not felt in hours. She could feel her fingers thawing, her ears warming, and for the first time that night, she allowed herself a small, grateful smile. "Thank you," she whispered. I didn't know if anyone would help me." The cowboy nodded. He understood. The desert was harsh, and people often faced it alone. "You're safe here," he said. "Tonight, at least, you won't have to face the cold outside." For a while, they sat in silence. The fire crackled softly, and outside the wind howled against the walls, but inside there was warmth and quiet. The Apache woman watched the flames dance and thought about her journey. She had traveled far from her home, uncertain of where she would sleep, and the storm had made her journey almost impossible. But now, here in this cabin, she felt a small measure of hope. The cowboy, meanwhile, watched her quietly. He could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the relief that came with safety, and he felt a sense of satisfaction. Helping someone in need was not unusual for him, but seeing the difference it made, seeing the hope return to someone's face, it reminded him why he had stayed in these parts, why he chose to live a life connected to people and land. As the night wore on, the woman slowly began to regain her strength. She spoke a little about her family, carefully, not revealing too much too soon. Ryan. She explained that she had been traveling to find them, that the snowstorm had separated her from the small group she was with, and that she had feared the worst. The cowboy listened, nodding occasionally, giving her space but also showing he cared. The storm continued outside, but inside the cabin there was a sense of calm. The warmth, the fire, and the simple act of being welcomed into safety created a small bubble against the harsh world outside. The woman knew that this night would be remembered, not just as a night of survival, but as a night when someone showed her true kindness. Hours passed, and she finally felt ready to rest. She settled closer to the fire, pulling a blanket around her shoulders. She felt the first real relief in days, the relief of being safe, warm, and cared for. The cowboy made sure she had everything she needed, then returned to his own side of the room, keeping a watchful eye but allowing her the peace she deserved. Before sleep could take her fully, she looked at the cowboy and said softly, almost to herself, "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't been here." The cowboy simply nodded, understanding that words were not needed. The important thing was that she was alive, safe, and no longer alone in the storm. The snow continued to fall outside, but inside, there was fire, warmth, and the quiet comfort of human connection. That night, in the middle of the cold and the snow, two strangers shared a simple but profound moment. One had been desperate, alone, and terrified. The other had chosen kindness over fear. Together they proved that even in the harshest circumstances, a single act of humanity could make all the difference. And as the Apache woman drifted off to sleep, the firelight reflecting in her eyes, she knew she had found more than temporary shelter. She had found hope. The morning came slowly. Outside, the snow still blanketed the desert. sparkling under the pale light of the rising sun. The storm had weakened, leaving only the soft sound of wind brushing against the trees. Inside the cabin, the warmth of the fire filled the small space, casting golden shadows on the wooden walls. Breath. The Apache woman stirred, stretching her stiff limbs. She had slept better than she had in days, wrapped in blankets, protected from the cold that had nearly frozen her the night before. She looked around the cabin, taking in its simplicity. It was small but well kept. There was a bed, a table with a few chairs, and a fireplace that crackled with steady warmth. On the wall, a few pictures hung, showing family and friends of the cowboy, though the images were old and faded. But sense of comfort settled over her. For the first time in a long time, she felt safe. The cowboy was already awake, preparing breakfast over the fire. The smell of fresh bread and warm coffee filled the air. He moved quietly, careful not to disturb her. When he noticed her eyes on him, he smiled gently. "Morning," he said simply. "I hope you slept well." "I did," she replied softly. Breath. "Thank you for letting me stay here." Breaths. Her voice carried both gratitude and hesitation. She was still cautious, still aware that the world could be unpredictable. But she had learned that some people, like this cowboy, were trustworthy. He nodded, pouring her a cup of coffee and handing it to her. "You'll need this. The snow outside isn't going anywhere yet." She accepted it, warming her hands around the cup. The hot liquid was comforting, spreading warmth from her hands to her chest. She took a small sip and let out a quiet sigh of relief. "It's good," she murmured. For a while they sat in silence, listening to the faint noises outside, the wind brushing through the trees, the occasional call of a bird. The Apache woman watched the cowboy, noticing the way he moved with quiet confidence, how his hands were rough but careful, and how his eyes seemed to observe everything around him. There was a calmness in him that she had not expected, a steadiness that made her feel safe. Eventually, she began to speak about her journey. She told him about how she had become separated from her family during the storm, how she had tried to find shelter, but had found nothing. She spoke carefully, sharing only enough to explain why she was there. Her words were quiet but full of emotion. The cowboy listened without interrupting. He did not ask questions that might make her uncomfortable. Instead, he let her tell her story at her own pace, offering small nods of understanding and occasional murmurs of encouragement. "I understand," he said when she finished a particularly difficult part. "It must have been very hard for you." She looked at him, surprised by his empathy. Many people she had encountered might have judged her, turned her away, or treated her with suspicion. But here, in this cabin, she felt accepted. For the first time, she realized that kindness could exist even in the coldest, most desperate moments. After a while, the conversation shifted. The cowboy shared stories about life on the ranch, about the work that had to be done even when the weather was harsh, about the animals he cared for and the challenges he faced. He did not speak to impress her or to show off, but simply to share his life, his reality. She listened with interest, asking questions and showing curiosity about his world. As they spoke, a sense of connection grew between them. They were strangers, yes, but in this small cabin they were also equals, sharing a moment of trust and understanding. The Apache woman realized that her journey had not just been about survival, it had also been about finding someone who could see her as a person, not just as someone in need. Hours passed and the snow outside began to melt slightly under the weak morning sun. The Apache woman felt stronger, more able to face the journey ahead. But she also knew that leaving would not be easy. The storm had left the terrain treacherous, and she would have to move carefully to avoid injury. The cowboy noticed her hesitation and offered his advice. "The paths are tricky right now," he said. There are hidden ice patches and soft snow that can make walking dangerous. If you want, I can help you plan a safe route back to your family.
Her eyes widened with gratitude. You would do that, she asked.
The thought of someone helping her beyond just giving shelter seemed almost unbelievable. I can't let you go out there without guidance, he said simply.
It's not safe. You've already been through enough. She nodded slowly, understanding his concern.
It was rare to find someone so willing to help without expecting anything in return. In that moment, she realized that her trust in him was not misplaced. She began to feel a sense of hope, not just for the journey ahead, but for the possibility of human kindness and support. While they discussed the safest paths, the Apache woman began to share more about her life. She spoke about her family, the people she loved, and the traditions that were important to her. She explained some of the challenges her community faced, the hardships of living in harsh environments, and the strength it required to survive. The cowboy listened intently, absorbing every word. He could see the resilience in her eyes, the courage that had carried her through the storm, and he felt a deep respect for her. At one point she paused and looked out the window at the snow-covered landscape. I never thought I would make it through last night, she admitted quietly. I thought maybe this is the end. The cowboy placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You made it, he said. And you're here now.
That means you can make it through anything else that comes your way. Her eyes filled with tears, but they were not just tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, gratitude, and a new sense of strength.
Perhaps she had faced the storm, survived it, and now she was learning that the world could be more forgiving than she had imagined. As the morning wore on, they worked together to prepare for her journey. The cowboy gathered supplies, extra blankets, food, water, and even a small pack that she could carry. He taught her how to recognize safe paths through the snow, how to avoid hidden dangers, and how to conserve her energy for the long trek ahead. Breaths. She listened carefully, absorbing every word, knowing that this knowledge could mean the difference between safety and danger. Throughout this preparation, their conversation continued. They spoke about small things, favorite foods, memories from childhood, and moments that had shaped their lives.
The Apache woman shared stories of her community. The cowboy shared stories of the ranch, and through these stories, they built a bond.
It was a bond formed not through obligation, but through shared humanity, through mutual respect, and through the simple act of listening. At one point, the Apache woman paused and looked at the cowboy with a small smile.
You've been so kind, she said. I don't know how to thank you enough.
The cowboy shrugged, smiling gently. You don't have to thank me. Helping someone in need is just what we do. You'd do the same for someone else if you could. She nodded, understanding his words. There was truth in them, a simplicity that spoke to the heart. She realized that the world could be a harsh place, but moments of kindness, like this one, could make all the difference. Finally, as the day grew brighter and the snow began to soften, they were ready. The Apache woman packed her supplies carefully, checked her clothing, and took a deep breath. She knew the journey ahead would still be difficult, but she also knew that she was not facing it alone. The guidance, warmth, and support she had received from the cowboy had given her strength she did not know she had. Before she left, she turned to him one last time. I will never forget what you've done for me, she said softly. The cowboy nodded, a quiet pride in his eyes. Just take care of yourself. And remember, courage is not about never being afraid. It's about moving forward even when you are. With that, she stepped out into the snow, carrying the warmth of the cabin and the memory of his kindness with her. Each step was careful, measured, but confident. The snow still made the journey challenging, but she no longer felt the same fear that had gripped her the night before. Psst, She knew that she had been given a gift, the gift of trust, the gift of hope, and the gift of someone who believed in her. As she walked, the cowboy watched from the cabin doorway. The wind still blew, and the snow still fell lightly. But he felt a quiet satisfaction. He had offered help when it was needed most, and in doing so he had made a real difference in someone's life. He knew that she would carry this moment with her, just as he would, and that sometimes the simplest acts of kindness could have the greatest impact. And so the Apache woman continued her journey, the memory of warmth and trust guiding her through the snow-covered plains. She moved forward not just with hope, but with the courage to face whatever lay ahead, strengthened by the quiet heroism of a cowboy who had opened his door and his heart to a stranger in need. The sun climbed higher in the sky, reflecting off the snow that covered the desert plains. The world seemed bright and beautiful, but it was still dangerous. The snow had hidden many hazards: frozen streams, soft patches where a person could sink, and slippery areas that could make even a strong traveler fall. The Apache woman knew she had to move carefully. Every step required attention, every movement counted. She adjusted the small pack on her back, feeling its weight against her shoulders. It carried the supplies the cowboy had given her: blankets, food, water, and a few small items she might need. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. She had been through much already, but the journey ahead would test her endurance even more. As she began walking, she kept the cowboy's instructions in mind. He had shown her which paths were safest, where the ground was firm, and how to navigate the snow without slipping. She repeated his words to herself quietly, like a mantra. Step carefully, watch the ice, keep your balance, and conserve your strength. The wind picked up again, colder than it had been in the morning. It whipped against her face, stinging her cheeks and making her eyes water. She pulled her scarf tighter around her mouth and nose, moving steadily forward. The snow crunched beneath her boots with every step, and sometimes it was all she could hear in the silent desert. Hours passed. She moved slowly but steadily, stopping occasionally to rest and sip water. Her body ached from the cold and the exertion, but she refused to give in. She remembered the cowboy's words about courage, not the absence of fear, but moving forward even when afraid. That thought gave her strength. Bray. Suddenly a sound reached her ears, a sharp cracking, followed by a loud crash. She froze, heart pounding. The snow had hidden a thin layer of ice beneath, and she realized a branch or tree could have fallen. She scanned the area quickly. A large branch had broken off a tree, sliding toward the frozen stream nearby. Her heart raced, but she knew she had to act carefully. She stepped back from the branch and waited until it came to a rest. Then, taking a cautious route around it, she continued forward. Blush. Each small obstacle made her more aware of her surroundings. She was alone, and she had to rely entirely on her skills and the cowboy's guidance. By midday, she reached a small ridge that overlooked part of the plains. The view was breathtaking. The snow stretched as far as the eye could see, sparkling under the sunlight. But beauty was not comfort here. It was a reminder of the vastness and danger of the world around her. She paused, taking a moment to rest and to admire the scene. But her mind quickly returned to the journey ahead. As she began descending the ridge, the snow became deeper, and each step required more effort. Her legs ached, and the cold seeped through her boots. She thought of her family and the fear they must feel for her safety. That thought pushed her forward, reminding her why she could not stop now. Suddenly, she heard a faint cry. Desperation. She stopped and listened. It came again, closer this time. She realized it was the sound of an animal, likely a horse struggling in the snow. Her heart sank. If an animal could get trapped, a person could too. She knew she had to investigate carefully. Following the sound, she found a horse partially stuck in the snow near a small dip. It struggled, trying to free itself, but the snow held it tightly. The woman approached slowly, speaking in a calm voice. "It's okay. I'm here to help," she whispered. The horse whinnied but did not panic as she carefully reached down. Desk? Using all her strength, she helped it free, one leg at a time until it could stand again. The horse shook itself, scattering snow in all directions. The woman smiled faintly, feeling a surge of relief. She knew she had done the right thing, helping a creature in need, just as the cowboy had helped her. This small act of kindness gave her renewed energy to continue her journey. By late afternoon, the temperature began to drop again. The sun was lower in the sky, and the wind carried an icy bite. She wrapped her blanket tighter around her shoulders, moving carefully but quickly. The plains stretched endlessly before her, and she could see small trees and bushes marking the path she had to follow. Then a new challenge appeared. A small ravine, hidden by snow, blocked her path. It was too deep to jump safely, and the sides were slippery. She considered going around, but the snow made the detour longer and more exhausting. She had to find a way across. Bridge. She looked around and noticed a fallen tree trunk nearby, half buried in snow. It could serve as a bridge. Breaking a deep breath, she tested its stability with one foot. It held. Carefully, step by step, she crossed the trunk, balancing herself with arms outstretched. Her heart pounded, but she did not falter. She reached the other side safely and let out a quiet sigh of relief. Her journey continued, each step testing her resolve, her strength, and her courage. The day wore on, and shadows grew longer across the snow. Fatigue set in, her muscles ached, and her body begged for rest. But she knew she could not stop yet. Her family was waiting, and she had to reach them before nightfall. As she walked, she reflected on the cowboy's kindness. He had not just given her shelter, he had given her guidance, hope, and the tools to survive. Every step she took now was supported by the lessons he had taught her, every careful movement a reminder of his quiet courage. She realized that people could make a difference, even in the harshest circumstances. Suddenly another sound reached her ears. Bright. This time it was human. A shout, distant but clear. Her heart skipped a beat. She called out, and a voice responded. It was a man from her community, searching for her. Relief washed over her, mixed with a burst of energy. She moved toward the sound, shouting her location as clearly as she could. Within minutes, she saw figures approaching through the snow. Her family had come for her, guided by her cries and the faint trail she had left. Prepared. Tears welled in her eyes as she ran to meet them. They embraced tightly, the warmth of human connection overpowering the cold that had gripped her all day. Her father held her close, relief etched on his face. "We feared the worst," he said softly. "We thought we might never see you again." I'm okay," she whispered, still shivering but now filled with gratitude. "I had help from someone kind." She explained about the cowboy, about the shelter, the fire, and the guidance he had given her. Her family listened, amazed by the story. Her father's eyes glistened with emotion. "There are still good people in the world," he said, "even in the hardest times." They stayed together briefly, resting and sharing food. The Apache woman felt a sense of completion, knowing that she had survived the storm, found safety, and returned to her family. But she also felt a quiet gratitude for the cowboy. His kindness had given her life and hope. Without him, she might have been lost in the snow, facing dangers she could not have overcome alone. As they prepared to return to their village, The woman looked back toward the distant cabin where the cowboy had waited for her, guided her, and kept her safe. She whispered a quiet thank you, knowing that this act of compassion would stay with her forever. The journey had tested her in every way, physically, emotionally, and mentally, but it had also shown her the strength she carried inside. She had faced the storm, navigated dangerous paths, helped an animal in need. She understood now that courage was not just about survival. It was about perseverance, trust, and the willingness to keep moving forward even when everything seemed impossible. Her family thanked the cowboy in their own way, promising that his kindness would not be forgotten. The Apache woman carried this story with her, telling others about the man who had opened his door and heart, teaching her that humanity and courage could shine even in the darkest, coldest moments. By the time they reached their village, the sun had set, casting the snow in a soft glow. The warmth of home awaited them, but the memory of the day, the challenges faced, and the help received would remain vivid. The woman knew she had been forever changed, not just by the storm, but by the kindness of a stranger who had shown her the power of compassion. And though the journey had been exhausting, dangerous, and uncertain, she walked with a new confidence. She had survived, she had learned, and she had witnessed how one act of humanity could create ripples of hope, courage, and gratitude that would last a lifetime. The village was quiet under a blanket of snow, the kind of quiet that only came after a long, harsh storm. The Apache woman moved slowly now, her steps lighter than before, her body tired but filled with a sense of relief and accomplishment. She had survived the journey, faced the dangers of the winter plains, and returned to the warmth of her family. But even as she felt the comfort of home, her mind kept returning to the cowboy, the man who had opened his door, given her shelter, and guided her safely through the storm. Her family gathered around her, helping her remove the wet layers of clothing and covering her with warm blankets. Her father's hands were strong as he adjusted the blankets around her shoulders. His eyes, usually calm and steady, were wide with relief. "We feared we might never see you again," he said softly. His voice trembled slightly, betraying the worry he had carried for her over the long, cold hours. "I'm here now," she whispered, her voice quiet but steady. "I'm safe, and I'll be okay." Her mother hugged her tightly, pressing her face against the woman's hair, breathing in the familiar scent that spoke of home and family.
"You've been so brave," her mother said.
"We are proud of you. But we were so worried." The Apache woman smiled faintly, grateful for their presence, yet her mind wandered back to the cowboy. She remembered the warmth of his cabin, the crackling fire, the hot tea that had thawed her frozen fingers, and the blankets that had given her comfort when the cold outside felt endless. She remembered his calm voice, the way he had listened without judgment, and the quiet confidence that had guided her when she felt most vulnerable. She shared his story with her family, telling them about the cabin, the fire, and the guidance he had given her. They listened with rapt attention, awe filling their faces. Her younger siblings leaned in closer, eyes wide, imagining the snow, the cold, and the courage it had taken for her to survive. "Do you think he will be okay?" one of them asked. "After all that snow?" Her father smiled knowingly. "He's a good man," he said. "Strong, careful, and kind. Anyone who helps someone in need like that will always find their way through trouble." The Apache woman nodded. "He was more than that," she said. "He was brave, but he didn't show it in a loud way." "He just helped. Quietly, but completely. Rest. He gave me hope when I had almost lost it." As the day passed, she rested, warmed herself, and shared simple meals with her family. The warmth of the home, the laughter of her siblings, and the steady presence of her parents reminded her of what she had been fighting for all along. The journey had been dangerous and exhausting, but it had also made her realize the strength she carried inside, the courage that had kept her moving. and the gratitude she felt toward those who showed kindness.
That evening, the woman and her father spoke about her next steps.
The snow was beginning to melt, but the terrain was still dangerous. They planned carefully for her continued travel and for the safety of their community. She carried the lessons from the cowboy with her. The careful steps, the observation of the land, and the importance of preparation. She had learned not only to survive, but to pay attention, to plan, and to act wisely. The Apache woman also knew she wanted to do something to honor the cowboy. She wanted him to know that his kindness had made a difference not only in her life, but in the lives of those who loved her. She thought about writing him a note, leaving something at his cabin, or perhaps visiting him once the snow cleared.
The thought brought a sense of purpose and joy to her heart.
As the sun began to set, the village glowed in the soft golden light, and the snow reflected the fading warmth. The Apache woman stepped outside briefly, taking in the beauty and calm of the evening. She breathed deeply, feeling the crisp air fill her lungs, and felt gratitude for the world around her. The land, the sky, her family, and the people who had shown her that humanity could be kind even in harsh conditions. Later that night, as she lay in her warm bed, the woman reflected on the journey. She thought about the storm, the dangers she had faced, and the moments when fear had almost overwhelmed her. She also thought about the moments of courage, the small victories, and the kindness that had carried her through. And above all, she thought about the cowboy, the stranger who had given her not just shelter, but hope. The next morning, she prepared a small gift, a simple gesture of thanks. She wrapped it carefully, thinking of the cowboy and hoping he would understand her gratitude. It was not much, but it carried all the warmth of her heart, all the respect and thanks she could offer. She knew that sometimes small gestures meant more than words. With the gift in hand, she set out to return to the cabin. The snow had softened even more, and the path seemed easier than before. Her family watched her go, proud of her courage and the kindness she sought to return. Her father called out, "Remember, bravery is not just in surviving. It's in caring, in helping, and in trusting." She nodded, smiling, carrying his words with her. When she arrived at the cabin, the cowboy was there, tending to the fire outside. He looked up, surprised to see her standing in the snow. Her heart beat quickly, but she stepped forward with confidence. She held out the small gift, a simple package wrapped in cloth. "This is for you," she said softly. "Thank you for everything." The cowboy's eyes widened slightly, touched by the gesture. He took the gift carefully, nodding in acknowledgement. You didn't have to," he said. "I wanted to," she replied. "You helped me when I had nowhere else to go. You gave me warmth, guidance, and hope. I will never forget it." The cowboy smiled, a quiet smile that carried understanding. "I'm glad you're safe," he said simply. "That's all that matters." They stood in silence for a moment, the snow drifting gently around them, the fire's warmth mixing with the chill of the evening. It was a moment of connection, of shared humanity, and of understanding that some actions, no matter how small, could leave lasting impressions. The Apache woman stayed for a while, sharing stories of her journey, of the challenges she had faced, and of the joy she felt in returning to her family. The cowboy listened, nodding occasionally, sharing quiet words of encouragement. They did not need to speak much. The presence of each other, the acknowledgement of courage and kindness was enough. Finally, it was time for her to leave. She hugged him briefly, a gesture full of gratitude and respect. "I will carry your kindness with me," she said.
Always. And I will remember your courage, he replied. You faced the storm and came out stronger.
That is something few can do. As she walked back toward her family, the Apache woman felt a sense of closure. The journey had been long, difficult, and filled with uncertainty, but it had also been a journey of discovery. She had learned the value of kindness, the strength of perseverance, and the importance of trust. She had faced fear and danger, and she had come out stronger. When she returned to the village, her family greeted her with warmth and joy. They listened as she told them about the cowboy, about the shelter, the fire, and the guidance he had given her. They understood the depth of her gratitude and the impact of the encounter. And though the snow had melted slightly, the memory of that day, of the kindness and courage she had witnessed, remained fresh and vivid. In the days that followed, the Apache woman shared the story with others in her community. She spoke of the cowboy who had helped her, the lessons she had learned, and the importance of compassion in the face of hardship. Her story inspired others, reminding them that even in difficult times, acts of kindness could make a profound difference. The cowboy, meanwhile, returned to his daily work on the ranch. He thought of the woman occasionally, smiling quietly to himself. He did not need recognition or praise. The simple knowledge that he had made a difference was enough. He understood now that sometimes the smallest actions, offering warmth, listening with care, guiding someone through danger, could leave the greatest impact. Months later, the Apache woman and the cowboy would meet again briefly, exchanging friendly greetings and shared smiles. Their encounter had created a bond, not through words, but through experience, trust, and mutual respect. It was a reminder that human connection, kindness, and courage could transcend distance, time, and circumstance. And so, the story ended not with grand gestures or dramatic fanfare, but with quiet lessons that would last a lifetime. The Apache woman had survived the storm, returned to her family, and carried with her the memory of a man who had shown her that even in the coldest, most desperate moments, humanity could shine brightly. The cowboy continued his life, tending to his land and animals, but with a renewed understanding of the power of kindness and the impact of a single act. And somewhere in the heart of the Apache woman, the warmth of that cabin, the fire, and the quiet heroism of a stranger would remain, a guiding light for all the challenges yet to come. The story became one of hope, courage, and gratitude, a reminder that the world could be harsh, but human kindness had the power to change lives forever.